Welcome back to the Nutrition Made Simple podcast. At Healthy Steps Nutrition, we believe something as fundamental as nutrition shouldn't be complicated, which is why we focus on a simple, habit-based approach when working with clients. I'm your host, Nicole Aucoin, registered dietitian and founder of Healthy Steps Nutrition, CrossFit HSN, and HSN Mentoring. I'm also the author of The Healthy Kids Cookbook, 100% kid-approved recipes the entire family will love. In this podcast, we will be teaching you how to take one step at a time to become the healthiest version of yourself. Today, I'm so excited to have Amanda Haar, one of our Healthy Steps Nutrition HQ dietitians, on this week's podcast episode. In this episode, we talk about everything related to hormones, nutrition, and your health. Amanda specializes in hormone and women's health. She works with clients with PCOS, hypothyroidism, people struggling to lose weight because of hormone issues, and even people that are struggling to get pregnant. She has such a passion for this subject, and she gives us some insight on the 4 main things that impact your hormone health and one actionable tip that you can take away from each of those to improve them. I'm so excited about this episode. We will get to this episode right after this message. Hormone health is such a popular topic. You never know who might be interested in this podcast episode. Will you do me a favor? Take a screenshot and post it on your Instagram story. Please don't forget to tag me at Nicole_RD_HSN and at Healthy Steps Nutrition so that we can see that you are watching it. Hope you enjoy this podcast episode with Amanda Haar on nutrition, health, and your hormones. Amanda, welcome to the Nutrition Made Simple podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Nicole.
I'm so excited to talk to you today. You are so busy seeing all of the clients at our Healthy Steps Nutrition HQ location. You work with some virtual clients too. So thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to me all about hormones today.
It's my pleasure. As I've probably told you many times, this is one of the biggest passions that I have working with nutrition.
Why are you so passionate about hormone health?
Great question. So let me take you back a decade.
A decade.
Not to get too long-winded, but I already started to be interested in this when I was in college. I actually did my thesis in school on soy and if it had effects on our fertility. Because at that time I had a family member who was going through IVF. And as anyone with fertility issues or has gone through it knows, that's a very hard process to go to. So studying to be a dietitian, I thought, what is there in the research right now that we can support our fertility and our hormone health through nutrition?
Makes complete sense. Okay. Well, you have to tell me with your thesis, did soy affect fertility?
Great question. So at the time, it was pretty disappointing. We had no conclusive research at either way, whether it had a big impact on it or not. Now, a decade later, we have so much more information on that. And of course, it's kind of a two-ended question. So it can be helpful, especially in its whole forms versus the processed forms.
And soy is one of the most popular genetically modified foods. A lot of those processed forms are in a lot of the foods that we eat. So if we can eat the whole food, awesome.
Yes, exactly. I like to choose organic, non-GMO soy if I'm going to consume it. And beans and other types of foods have a lot of the same benefits too.
Awesome. Thanks for that tip. All right, we're going to dive into hormone health. There are 4 main things that can affect your hormones. Let's dive into the first one.
Yeah, definitely. So the first one is our gut. So there's a lot of information on our gut health these days, how it affects our brain, how it affects our immune system, which is definitely something we're hearing about. 80% of our immune system resides in our gut, but also it plays a part in our hormone levels. So our immune system is a big part of our hormone production, but also it produces some enzymes that help us to get rid of excess estrogen. So it's really cool to think about how what we eat goes through this tube, right? And part of that tube is our gut, and it makes an influence on our hormone levels.
Super interesting. And I think immune health, more important than ever right now. People are super aware of what they're eating and how they can boost their immune system because that helps us fight off a lot of different things, including getting sick.
Definitely. Yeah. So one of my best tips for gut health is really having a good source of fermented foods or probiotics every day. And the amount that you have doesn't matter so much as the frequency of it. So research shows that even if we have a tablespoon of fermented foods daily, and that could be something like yogurt, especially if it's the low sugar or no sugar kind, sauerkraut, tempeh, a lot of different good sources of fermentation that we can have. Even a tablespoon a day can help to support a positive balance in our microbiome in our gut.
Great point. I know I recently had Dr. Uma Naidu on the podcast. She talked about gut health and the link between depression and anxiety. You can go back or click the link in the show notes and get that podcast episode. But she also talked about gut health and probiotics and how important they are, not only for immune health, but also to help fight anxiety and depression too.
That's huge. And the cool thing is, right, like our bodies are all a feedback system amongst one another. So when we have balance in our hormones, that affects our mood. And when we have balance in our gut, that affects our mood. So it's really cool to think about how all these things are actually interconnected. And the root that we need to think about is, what is that step that I can take in order to start this positive cascade in our health?
I love that. All right, so we've dialed in gut. Let's talk about the next thing, liver.
Yeah, so our liver does a lot of work these days. So we have a lot of plastics we're exposed to, a lot of pollution in the air, a lot of alcohol, especially since COVID for a lot of people. So it has to do a lot of work eliminating the toxins out of our body. So of course, one very obvious tip that we can do to support our liver function is to lower our alcohol intake if we do have high alcohol intake. And another one that I think is a little bit less known is limiting our exposure to heating foods and plastics. Plastics can be endocrine disruptors or hormone disruptors. So the less we can heat our food in plastics or liquids in plastics, the less exposure of those that we'll have. So it's less for our liver to have to work through on a daily basis. So we can't eliminate the toxins that we're exposed to, but we can lower the work that our liver has to do.
Great tip. So if you're using like 3-compartment containers, there's a lot of companies that make glass 3-compartment containers, so you can just heat it up in glass instead of the plastic.
Definitely. I'm a huge fan of that.
Awesome. All right. And of course, alcohol. You know, a problem with alcohol is not always, I mean, yes, it's the alcohol, but it's also the mixers that you put in the alcohol that cause your blood sugar to go up, which is another thing that affects our hormones, blood sugar balance.
Exactly. Yes. So you think about, I mean, we have insulin receptors on all of our different cells, right? And that includes our eggs and our reproductive parts of our body as well. So we know that diabetes shows insulin resistance. Our cells aren't able to take blood sugar in like it's supposed to. Well, our reproductive parts can become insulin resistant too. And what impact do you think that has on our hormones? That's makes a huge difference. I have a client that I'm working with right now. She has PCOS, and funnily, a lot of times we don't know that blood sugar balance can be a cause of PCOS, but also inflammation can be a cause of PMS. So inflammation is one thing, but blood sugar balance, she has improved her blood sugar balance, and along with some medications, like she started to ovulate again. And it's so cool to see that. And one of the biggest tips that she started to implement is to include protein with all of our meals and snacks, and to just reduce the added sugar that she's taking in on a daily basis.
I would bet that most people have no idea how much sugar they're consuming because so many foods are marketed as healthy. And we have conversations with Jason's dad all the time about juice, right? Like he is gung-ho about having a large glass of juice in the mornings, but it causes your blood sugar to go up. Can we have a whole piece of fruit instead? That simple switch is going to help lower the insulin spike that your body has to have, that hormone cascade to help with blood sugar balance. If someone is not sure about how much sugar they're intaking, a simple strategy would be to look at the food labels, turn the boxes around, turn the packages around of the food that you're eating and just see it. It clearly states how much added sugar is in the food that you're eating now with the new nutrition facts labels.
Definitely. I love that resource. And even going to the grocery store, and let's say you love getting one type of yogurt, compare it to the other types of yogurt that are around it. Is that the best choice, or is there a better choice that we can include in there?
I think this has happened with us before, yogurts especially. You think like Greek yogurt, it's a good option. Well, we know that when sugar is added to foods, especially when it's paired with fat, is going to cause your brain to light up and crave more and more and more. So of course, companies that make Greek yogurt are going to add sugar and fat to the yogurt so that you want more of it. It makes sense. But unfortunately, that doesn't help with our blood sugar balance. So I think that's a great tip. I think yogurt is especially a common one. I also think oatmeal is another common one. Protein pancakes are a few different brands that have loaded amounts of sugar, added sugar in there. So we have natural sugars in fruits, but then and in dairy, but then there's a lot of times added sugar on top of the natural sugar. You know, Jason got these energy balls recently by Kodiak Cake, and we have a recipe on the website that you can make from scratch, but we're always looking for convenient, easy stuff for clients like that don't have the time or don't want to make something from scratch. Okay, what can you do? So these Kodiak Cake energy balls, you know, the ingredients were not terrible. There wasn't a ton of added sugar, but the preparation method on the back is you add 1/3 cup of honey.
That's a lot of honey.
That's a lot of honey for 12 balls. I mean, it went from like 18 or 20 grams of sugar for one ball. I mean, that's
a lot of sugar.
Over 4 teaspoons of sugar in something that's you would think is healthy. And I think that's the problem a lot of times is you think things are really healthy. So instead we made these and I was like, Jay, you're not putting honey in there. We're going to do unsweetened applesauce and just see how they taste. And they tasted great. And we didn't add a ton of added sugar to it. We cut the sugar by like 2/3 just by changing no honey, unsweetened applesauce. So simple tips and strategies. But the thing is you wouldn't really know unless you were super mindful and cognizant of that.
Yeah. What I like to talk about a lot of times with clients is that we need to outsmart the food manufacturers. They will do whatever they can to market that food as something that you think is healthy and that you're going to like. But once we know how to read the nutrition labels, we have the foundation in order to do that.
I love that. So blood sugar balance is really important. What's one tip that people could do to help with blood sugar balance?
Yeah, great question. So looking at the nutrition labels is a huge one. And again, like I mentioned, including protein with your meals and snacks, because protein helps us to feel full. And when we have kind of naked carbohydrates with our snacks, which most snacks are, especially the snacks marketed to kids, we just tend to feel more and more hungry. And then our blood sugar levels are spiking up and crashing down and spiking up and crashing down. So the more we can always just think about how can we pair string cheese with berries, or one of my favorite snacks that I a lot of times share with women who are struggling with PMS is for a snack having a rice cake with some peanut butter and some Lily's dark chocolate chips on top.
Ooh, that sounds really delicious. I know whenever I want something sweet, I'll get the Chobani low sugar vanilla and cinnamon yogurt, and then I'll put a few those dark chocolate chips in there and it tastes delicious. It's like a nice little treat. I was reading something today actually from Levels Health, and that's a continuous glucose monitoring experiment that you can do by yourself. So you can see like how much is my blood sugar going up after each food. And they did a like internal experiment and they had people walk after they ate and it decreased their blood sugar by like, I can't remember the exact number, so don't quote me, but I think it was around 20%. So it was like significantly lower just by going for a walk, so getting moving. So if you do have something, if you have some carbohydrates, just go for a walk after, get your blood sugar to be on more stable and under control.
That is a fantastic recommendation. I love that. And I also think about when we're cooking at home, we've already made the step of having foods more nutrient dense than if we were necessarily going out to a lot of different restaurants. But also in that process, we do have to clean up the kitchen. We have to take our dishes to the dishwasher. We just naturally get more movement in after our meals. So it's one of those things where, it's a positive cycle where the benefits keep going. So I love, yes, taking a walk afterwards, just getting active after your meals rather than, sitting down like a couch potato after our meals.
I love it. And it's a great habit for the entire family to do together, right?
Definitely.
All right, let's talk about the last one, inflammation. How does inflammation affect hormone health?
Great question. So inflammation is kind of a very umbrella term these days, right? It can mean a lot of things. Like when we have very high blood sugar levels, that naturally creates inflammation in the body. When we eat a lot of processed foods, that creates inflammation. And when especially our gut is inflamed, that can reduce the amount of vitamins, minerals, nutrients that our body can consume and utilize. And a lot of those nutrients are building blocks for our hormones. So it kind of goes through a little bit of a pathway, but in many different ways, the inflammation can make a big impact on hormone health. I know for me personally, I kind of went through my own fertility and hormone journey myself, but lowering the amount of inflammation has made a huge difference in my life, in my hormones, in my fertility, in just even my general aches and pains and energy levels in my body. So it's really cool to see how targeting that can very much improve your health and your hormones.
Absolutely. And you have two beautiful children now after having a journey with infertility. And you really personally took this on yourself to figure out, okay, how do I impact my hormones with my nutrition and taking care of my body, all these things instead of just going directly to pills. And yes, IVF and the other artificial ways to get pregnant are the solution for a lot of people. But, I think you went a different path and originally like, okay, what can I personally do to control my fertility?
Exactly. Yep. And for each person that looks a little bit differently. I would say kind of first step is, the more whole foods that we eat rather than processed foods, that is naturally going to help lower inflammation levels. For me, myself and a lot of my clients, we might take it a step further and really kind of pinpoint the foods that might be causing excess inflammation, because even some of the foods that we generally know are healthy, sometimes our immune systems get a little bit too hyperactive and a little bit mixed up. So it's really helpful to find which foods our bodies have mounted a reaction to. And we see this a lot with COVID, right? So our body has antibodies in response to something else and kind of making us feel ill when we're not supposed to feel ill from that food. And so eliminating these and focusing on the foods that we know are not causing inflammation for us can make a huge difference.
Specifically talking about those foods, you do testing with a lot of clients to help them figure out what foods, besides trial and error. So they do a test and then you help them interpret, okay, these are the foods that you can have, these are the foods that you shouldn't have, because every person's a little bit different. You might be able to tolerate a food and I might not be able to, or I might be able to tolerate and one of our listeners can't.
Exactly. Yep. So what we typically do is, first of all, we like to kind of see if we can figure out through food and symptom journals. I have one client that we never even had to do testing because she was really good at tuning into how foods made her feel. For some people, we might need to take it that step further to the testing. And what I utilize is mediator release testing. So it simply looks at how many inflammatory mediators or kind of white blood cells are produced in response to a food, rather than testing for an antibody, which might show tolerance or intolerance. And from there, we kind of get a list of what are the foods that are not causing your body to be in an inflamed state and what are the ones that are. So we can focus on the foods that we know are positive for our body.
So when you do this with clients, what ends up happening? Like, what are the symptoms they have before, and then how are things changing once they are in tune with what foods they can and can't eat?
Great question. So we have a few different phases of implementing this eating plan. So a lot of people that I've worked with, they've had digestive issues, headaches, constitutional type of issues like depression, insomnia, and those would be kind of the bigger ones. IBS, migraines, fibromyalgia. Those are kind of the big three conditions that we really have a lot of research behind this type of testing. But it can be, other symptoms around that. So we typically look for at least a 50% improvement of symptoms after the first 2 weeks of starting the eating plan.
2 weeks?
Yes. After the first 2 weeks.
How did I not know that?
Not saying that's the end of the road. We typically want to see those numbers fall even more as we go on. The reactive foods we typically want to avoid for at least 3 months for the slightly reactive foods and 6 months for the very reactive foods. But it is really cool to look back because we do a symptom survey to actually help us quantify what we're feeling. So we do one beforehand and kind of add up all the things that we're experiencing. 2 weeks in, we do it again. We want to see at least 50% improvement before we start challenging in different types of foods that are not necessarily reactive for us. And it's so cool to see the numbers fall and also to be able to look back at where we were. And that helps continue our motivation to continue on the path that we're on. Because when we look back at how we felt before, and I know that this personally, I can't believe I was living and feeling this way, it really just helps us motivate to continue on because it's not just something in our minds, like we feel it in our bodies.
I think that's so important because truthfully, most people don't even know how their body is designed to feel. It's like, okay, yeah, I feel this way, or I'm always tired, or I feel bloated, or I always feel this one certain way, and that's just the way my body is intended. When in reality, is there something going on that your body's saying like, hey, I can't have this, or hey, do this other thing to help me feel better. And then you're really helping guide that client to figure out, okay, what is it for that one person so that they can, improve by 50% after 2 weeks. That's amazing. So many things covered in this episode. I mean, really the goal here is looking at what are you doing now and what can you do to improve hormone health, whether it be, and you created this acronym, we'll call it a new word by Amanda Haar, GLIB, gut, liver, inflammation, and blood sugar balance. What can we do to improve those hormones? And truthfully, it affects so many different things. Infertility, I know PCOS is another thing. You work with quite a few clients that have PCOS.
Yep, definitely. Yep, and endometriosis, even, PMS, I know that's something that we're told in our society is like normal, but it doesn't have to be normal. There's definitely a spectrum of PCOS that we can definitely improve by, targeting whatever one of those areas is your lowest hanging fruit. Start with that. And from there, it's really cool to see what you'll be feeling after a couple months of doing that. Now, remember that it takes about 3 months for an egg to mature before we ovulate. So when we want to see hormonal improvements, we want to give at least 3 months to see those improvements. It takes a little bit of time, but it's definitely worth it in the long run.
Amanda, you are such a special human and care so much about your clients. I'm so grateful to have you as part of our team and can only imagine how much you're going to grow with us in the coming years.
Thank you so much for having me as a part of a team. It's been such an awesome journey, and I'm excited to, work with every person. This is exactly what I wanted to do as a dietitian, and we're doing it. So great.
Hope you enjoyed that episode with Amanda. One of the most surprising statistics is that 80% of your immune health resides in your gut. What does that mean? Well, your nutrition and how you fuel your body can either help or hurt your ability to fight off and prevent getting sick. I think immune health has never been more important, and we want to do everything that we can do to promote optimal immune systems in our body. I don't know about you, but I want to be the best version of myself every single day, and it's super important to me. When we talk to every single new client before they sign up, they tell us that they want to feel better, they want to have more energy, they want to feel confident in their skin, they want to be the best versions of themselves. It's not necessarily about losing weight. Weight loss and reaching your wellness goals will come when there's consistency with fueling your body with proper nutrition, moving, managing your stress, and sleeping. These are all important factors to help you optimize your health. I have to give a shout out to one of our nutrition clients, Brittany. She wrote a recent Google review, and it says, "Let's just say that I'm not a novice when it comes to weight loss programs. I've tried shake plans, Nutrisystem, Weight Watchers, dietitians, nutritionists, Whole30, prescribed macro-based plans, etc. While all of these work, nothing sustained. The first day after I hit my weight goal, I canceled the subscription, my old habits came back in full throttle, and so did my weight. I finally surrendered and gave up the instant gratification route and landed on a slower, long-term solution with HSN. I have new habits. I have a better relationship with food. I'm not spending a fortune on meal replacements and fat loss supplements. I'm not on a restrictive diet. Oh, and I don't step on the scale daily or kill myself with intense cardio. I have a better relationship with food and myself. Highly recommend. I have goosebumps reading that Google review because that is the key to healthy steps nutrition. It's looking at you individually, creating a plan that's realistic for you so that you feel like you're not on a restrictive diet, that you truly have a healthy lifestyle where you have that better relationship with food and with yourself. Brittany, thank you for trusting us and your nutrition coach, Liz, to help you build that healthy relationship with food. I'm so excited to watch what continues to become of your transformation. If you enjoyed this podcast, we would love for you to subscribe and leave us a review. Every single week, we provide simple and actionable tips to help you make health a way of life. Today, we talked all about hormone health and 4 things that you need to do to help you optimize your hormone levels. The first thing we talked about was incorporating probiotics every single day. Then we talked about lowering your alcohol intake and reducing the reheating of plastics. We talked about blood sugar balance, and adding protein with every meal and snack, and even going for a walk. I hope you can incorporate one of these habits consistently so that you can better your hormone health. We'll see you back here next week.